This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. My name is Valerie Worthington, and this is the fifth in a series of informal conversations I'm having with some amazing people I know through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This stemmed from my desire to just sort of create community, and since we all can't train together, to celebrate all the amazing things that my teammates and friends do. And so today, I'm really happy that Amanda Spasojevic has agreed to chat with me. She is a badass jujitsu player, and she also has experience, professional experience in cooking and baking. And she's going to show us some easy recipes that we can make, probably with things that we already have at home, since people are trying not to go shopping too much. So, Amanda, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can you say a little bit about your cooking and baking background?
Sure, yeah. So I cooked professionally it's a few years now for a Stephen Star restaurant called Rats. So that was back in 2012. Long story short, I ended up moving to England and changing careers and all this. But during that time as well, and in the years since, I've done a lot of wedding cakes and baking on the side. And it started in college, making cakes for friends for their birthdays. And then I started a little side business where people on campus could order from me and I would deliver the cakes. And they ended up writing a little newspaper article about me. And it kind of just snowballed from there. So I've always kind of been in the kitchen. And even though I'm not doing it professionally anymore, I still like to do it, especially now as a stress relief and just to keep busy. So, yeah.
I was going to ask you, you mentioned a couple things. What are some of the things that baking and cooking give you, especially nowadays when we're all kind of cooped up?
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's predictable. So you know that you can kind of hopefully get the same outcome every time. But it's also creative. So I always need a creative outlet. And the cake decorating side of it gave that to me. I really enjoy that part of it. But yeah, I just enjoy it, the stress relief of it and the smells and the textures and playing with food. And once you understand the rules, especially about baking, you know how you can break those rules and improvise and throw things together. So, and I find the same as with jujitsu. You know, once you know the rules and the fundamentals of things, you know how you can find the exceptions to those rules. And so it's kind of fun.
The other thing that comes to mind for me that is true of both jujitsu and baking is that it brings people together. So you just, I hope you don't mind, but you just shared an example of how you made some biscuits for one of your teammates and left them on the porch and he came and got them. And that's a way to connect in a time when we can't really connect with each other as much as we want to. So, and I love that story. I think that's beautiful. And I'm sure he's very happy with the treat.
So. Yes, he was, and he left some beer on the step in return. So
there you go. This is a if we can try to make some things positive out of this, then I think that food and what that gives us in terms of company and connection is a big part of it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So now I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn it over to you. And I understand that through the magic of television, you're going to be able to show us some easy recipes and then maybe even the outcomes. And I should mention that the recipes that Amanda is going to show, I will make sure to attach to the video so that you have access to them if you feel like baking later today. So I'm going to make you bigger and me smaller.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask
you down over here.
Take it away.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys for joining me. So we're going to do a few different recipes today, hopefully with things that you have in your house, especially as we're trying not to go to the store as much. We want to limit those trips. So here are some things that hopefully you can make with the things that you have around your house. The first recipe we're going to make is a 3-ingredient peanut butter cookie. So very few ingredients, super easy. I like to use a scale, a kitchen scale. I know that not everybody has a scale handy, but that's what I like to use. So that's what I'm going to use to measure today. But everything in the recipes is also in cups and your standard measurements as well. So the first step for the cookies is lining a sheet with parchment paper. So you're going to use a baking sheet, and you're just going to line it with some parchment paper like this. And you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I'm going to turn on my scale. Can you see everything okay? Let me know if you can't.
So let's see, here we go. Okay, yes, I can see. I was having a technical difficulty, which had nothing to do with you, so you're doing great. So go ahead.
Okay, go. All right, I'm going to do 1 egg. That's our first ingredient out of the 3. Then we need a cup of sugar. So you can always measure this using a measuring cup. I'm going to pour 200 grams into my kitchen scale.
200 grams. You clearly have spent time in London.
I know. Well, grams, I find is a little bit more specific. I mean, I guess you can use ounces. I just got used to using grams. There we go.
And is it true that Amanda, that baking requires more precision than cooking? I've heard that before.
It does, but like I was saying before, once you understand the rules about baking, you know how to break them. So it does require some precision, especially more finicky things like making macaron or puff pastry, things like that. But once you get the hang of it, you know if something is right by the way it looks. So, but it's always good to measure.
Great.
And then, so that's 1 egg, 1 cup of sugar, just granulated regular white sugar. And then you're going to do 1 cup of peanut butter. And that's 224 grams, depending on the type of peanut butter you use. So this is our 3rd ingredient. But if your peanut butter doesn't have salt included, I would also add a pinch of salt to this. So at least a 1/4 teaspoon. Just to balance out the sweetness. So that's our cup of peanut butter. And then you're just going to mix it up. And then that's your cookie dough. The other thing you can do with this, so it doesn't need to just be these 3 ingredients, but this is your base. So you can feel free to, after we roll the dough balls, you can roll them in sugar to add a crunchy exterior. You can put like a little Hershey's Kiss on top, kind of like, what are they called? Peanut butter blossom cookies. So you're just gonna mix this up.
So with the Kiss, you're speaking my language. I'm a big fan of the chocolate peanut butter combo.
Yeah, they're good. It's a good combo. You could even, after they're baked, you can dip them in melted chocolate after they're cooled. So you just want to really mix it up, incorporate all the ingredients, especially that egg. And then your mixture is going to look something like this. And I found that if you give it a minute to sit and kind of like soak up, it becomes a little bit thicker as well, which can be easier for rolling, because that's what we're going to do next. So you want to take your baking sheet, and then you just stick your hands right in it. And you want to roll the cookie dough into about, I would say like a ping pong size little ball. And you're going to plop that on your sheet. Like I said, you can then take this ball and roll it in some sugar. You could put sprinkles in the dough, spice it up a little bit. You could put, literally spice it up with some cinnamon, or you could use almond butter instead of peanut butter. There's a bunch of different variations that you can use.
And things like sprinkles, that could be fun if you're doing this with your kids.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I would find that fun too, but if you're kids.
I find myself putting sprinkles in just about everything. Pancakes.
They're welcome at any party.
Oh yeah. All right, so once you have the balls on your sheet like this, You're just going to take a fork and do a crisscross pattern on top, and this just helps them spread out a little bit and bake more evenly. So I'm sure many of you have seen this classic type of look, but I'll show you in a second. Just going to crisscross them. And that's what they look like before they go in. And then you pop them in the oven. And they're going to be in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes. And you can tell my oven's not on because I just reached in with my bare hand. But this is what they look like when they're done. So they look very, very similar. They don't spread a whole lot. But you do want to leave some space in between, just so they're not overcrowded and they still bake evenly. Yeah, and that's super easy. Like I said, you can drizzle with chocolate after they're done. We like to crumble them up on like making yogurt parfaits instead of granola, because that's kind of healthy. I don't know.
They're so pretty.
Yeah, they're cute. They're cute little cookies.
Delicious. And you, they're just 3 ingredients, and you had mentioned earlier that you have some loved ones who can't stomach flour. So this is a gluten-free recipe, right?
Yeah. Yep. Gluten-free. Unfortunately, it's not vegan, but our next one is vegan, just by coincidence, not by design. So we can move on to that one too. So that was super easy, super quick, in the oven, 12 to 15 minutes, and then you have some cookies. And like I said, you can use almond butter as well. I know a lot of people prefer almond butter, so yeah, works with that too. Okay, so then the next recipe we're going to do is a simple vanilla cake, and it doesn't have any dairy, it doesn't have any eggs. It's really easy with stuff you have in your pantry. So just your typical flour, sugar, baking soda type of situation. So I like to spice it up with some sprinkles, but that's just me. All right, so we're going to do the scale again, this setup. Again, 350 degrees on your oven. That's pretty standard with baking. And then you're going to prepare a 9-inch cake tin. So just grease it. You can use butter. I use cooking spray for something like this. And then just a light dusting of flour. You just want to shake it around the pan, tap it around, dump out the excess, and then it's coated like this. You just want a light dusting of that. Okay. So this recipe starts with a cup and 3/4 of flour. So that's 210 grams. I had a lot more flour yesterday, and then those biscuits kind of ate up a lot of them. So hopefully I have enough.
The ones you made for our friend.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have enough.
The long biscuits.
All right, so with this, you're going to start with your dry ingredients. So the flour is the first one, and then you're going to do a teaspoon of baking soda. And this is what's going to give us that leavening effect, since we're not using eggs. Typically, you would use baking soda anyway, but this is going to be the sole thing that is going to leaven this dish. So do a teaspoon of that. And we're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm kind of a salt freak. I like it a lot, so I usually dump a little extra in there.
I'm a big salt fan too. Is it only for flavor, or does it have an effect on the finished product as well?
It really is only for flavor. Sometimes it can be a tenderizing type of agent, but in the quantities here, it is so minimal that really it's just to balance those flavors out. Okay, so these are our dry ingredients. We're just going to give them a little whisk just to incorporate them, and we're also going to make sure the flour doesn't have any big lumps in it. It's almost like a makeshift sifting method without getting the sifter out. It's not as effective, but it still works. Okay, so those are our dry ingredients. Now we're going to move on to the wet ingredients. So we're going to use vanilla, if we can open it. I like to use vanilla bean paste. So that's this here, but you can use vanilla extract. Vanilla bean paste is just a little bit thicker. It has the actual beans in it, so it adds like a nice, you can see the little flecks of vanilla bean in it. But
can you get that at the supermarket?
You can. You know, the last time, I don't buy it that often because it lasts a really long time. The last time I looked, they were having a vanilla shortage, so it was kind of hard to find, but they should have it in the store. Probably Whole Foods would have it, maybe not Acme, but we're doing a teaspoon of that. You can see I didn't measure it precisely. I just eyeball vanilla. I think it's fine if you just get around a teaspoon. That's kind of hard. The paste is a little bit harder to measure with a measuring spoon. We're also going to do a bit of a wild card ingredient that a lot of people find in baking, which is vinegar. So you can use, it says white vinegar. I'm using rice vinegar, really any vinegar, probably not balsamic, but a mild type of vinegar. And that's going to counteract the baking soda and help with leavening, but you're not going to taste it at all.
Is
And I'm sure we all have, what's that?
Sorry, is apple cider another option for a vinegar?
For sure, yeah.
Okay. I think I have that. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to do 6 tablespoons of oil. The way I like to measure 6 tablespoons is doing a 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons. Pour that in. And then you can just do half of that, but just to be precise, I'll do 2 of these tablespoons like this. Otherwise, if I have to count out 6 of these, I'm going to forget and lose count. So do 6 of those. And then we need sugar, the most important step. And this again is just your regular granulated sugar, and that's 200 grams. So a cup.
It's so handy to have the mixing bowl on the scale, so then you are able to be precise, but you don't, like you're saying, you don't have to count out scoops. You just have to do a little math.
Exactly. And once you know the equivalents of things, like a cup is 200 grams, and you can keep like a little note that reminds you or whatever. You do it enough, you start memorizing this stuff, then yeah, it's super easy. So did I remember everything? I think so. So now we're just going to give this, no, I didn't remember everything. We need a cup of water, otherwise this is not going to mix.
Well, and that's my fault because I keep talking to you.
No, I like it. I'd rather you talk to me. So we're just doing a cup of regular water here, but you can use that step as a way to interject some flavor. So if you wanted to do like a cup of coffee instead, make a coffee cake, you could totally do that there. Instead of vanilla, you could use like almond extract, lemon extract. So there's definitely room to adapt these recipes. And I threw a couple of those adaptions on the recipes themselves in case anybody was curious. So you're just going to give this a good whisk and get out some lumps. Make sure that there's no big hunks of flour or sugar anywhere. The nice thing about a clear bowl is you can see at the bottom if you have any pockets that haven't been mixed in. You want to be careful not to over mix it. You're doing it by hand, you're not using a mixer, so it's unlikely you're going to over mix, but if you stand here for 10 minutes mixing it, you might get a tough cake. And then the last thing, which I find the most important, is the sprinkles. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons. I just like to use the palm of my hand, 2 handfuls of those. We just add them in at the end and stir them in. It makes a confetti cake. Because who knows how many birthdays we're going to celebrate in quarantine.
It's a good point. It's a really
All right, so now we're going to take our cake tin. This could also be made in a square baking dish, so like an 8x8 baking dish. You could double the recipe and do it in a 9x13. You want to pay attention to the baking times if you do any changes like that. All
And
right.
are there modifications for those kinds of measurements that you can find online? Like if you're using a circular pan as opposed to an 8 by 13 pan?
Yeah, I'm sure that's one of the things that as you become more familiar and in a routine with baking, you'll get a feel for, okay, I can double this, put this in, it's probably gonna need 5 more minutes, but you just keep checking it. And the way you do that, I'll show you in a second. We're just gonna pop this in my very on oven.
Well, that was convincing.
I know. And it's gonna bake for about 30 to 35 minutes. What you'll do, I have skewers here, wooden skewers. You can use just a normal toothpick. You're just gonna insert that in the middle, pull it out, and when it comes out clean, no like runny batter on it, then it's fully baked. So it's gonna cool in the pan for about 5 minutes, and then you're gonna wanna turn it out of the pan. So you use a butter knife around the rim of the cake tin. And if you want to leave it in the baking dish as well, like a 9 by 13, you can just serve it in the pan and put the glaze on top. But if you want to turn it out, you're going to run it around the rim and then cool it on a baking dish or a cooling rack, and then you can put it on your plate here. So here's your finished cake. This is what it'll look like. Yeah, it's a cute little guy. And then you can frost it with anything you want. You can, I have a can of frosting in the cupboards. I'm sure a lot of people have that handy. Or you can whip up a buttercream. So that's just butter and then powdered sugar, a little bit of milk to loosen it up. We're going to do a quick glaze though. So I need a bowl. I used all my cleared bowls. So that's just powdered sugar and water. Super easy. You can throw some vanilla on there too. I'm just going to do a cup of powdered sugar. So that's 116 grams. You'll notice too with powdered sugar, it's 116 grams for a cup, whereas granulated is 200 grams. It's just so much lighter. So you get to the volume with a lot less weight. So that's a cup there. And then you can throw some vanilla extract in here too. But if you use like the paste that I used before, it's going to tinge it a brown color, which who cares? We're stuck in quarantine. It's going to taste great. But it kind of looks a little bit dingy. So I'm just going to leave it out for now and just keep it pure sugar.
Well, you had also mentioned other types of extracts, right? Like almond extract wouldn't have that same color. Maybe a lemon extract wouldn't have that same color. So are those other options?
Yeah, that's totally possible. You can use those. And they have a clear vanilla extract as well that if you had that won't change the color at all. And you can even dye this. You can put a couple drops of food coloring in, make it pink, make it blue, whatever. You just have to keep in mind that when you are adding other liquids to this, you're going to adjust the amount of water because it becomes a glaze very quickly. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that. So we're just going to start with 1 tablespoon of water and start giving that a good mix. You're definitely going to need more than 1 tablespoon, but I'm just going to get it started. Okay. And then I didn't add the whole thing there. You're just going to, like I said, do a little bit at a time, keep whisking, and then you want to end up with a thick glaze that's still pourable. It slowly falls back into the bowl, creates light ribbons. So I'll show you that once it's there. And you have to make a mess while you do this. It's required.
Absolutely. Well, and is one of the ways that you show that you've worked really hard is you put some flour on your face, right? So,
yeah.
So it looks like you've been working hard.
Exactly.
So you don't have to do that today.
All right. You just want to whisk it until the the powdered sugar doesn't have any clumps in it. So this is like a slow ribbon here, so that's good. So just use a spatula. Just pour this on the cake.
And if you wanted to, it looks, Amanda, it looks like if you wanted to have a layer cake, you could just double the recipe of the cake batter. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
And then
yeah.
do two.
Yep, you could totally do that. Yeah, I probably will do that after this since I have another one that I'm going to end up with. So if you do a layer cake though, you might want to use a sturdier frosting recipe. This one is a little bit, you'll see as it sets, it's quite runny, even though it's spreadable right now. It doesn't really have the structure to hold up, so your top layer might slip and slide. So I would use something like a thicker buttercream, or even your canned frosting would work in that sense.
Good to know.
So this, you're just going to spread it out. I'm using a butter knife. You can use an offset spatula, which makes it a little bit cleaner. If you made it a little bit runnier, you can just have it run down the sides. That's always nice.
Well, and that's part of the aesthetic, right? Like you were saying that, I was thinking about how you said that if you use vanilla, it still tastes good, but I imagine that so much of what people are looking for when you make them a wedding cake is that visual aesthetic too, right? So
Yeah.
that's a lot of what
It's almost like, yeah, it's almost kind of the opposite with a wedding cake where they don't really care how it tastes. They're probably not going to eat it anyway. They just want it to look nice. But I mean, they do want it to taste good too. But sometimes they'll, you'll see with wedding cakes, if somebody, say they're having a small wedding and they still want that 3-tier wedding cake, but they don't have that many people to feed. Some of the layers will actually be, or the tiers will be styrofoam, and they'll just use frost that and then put real cake on the rest of it.
You know, I feel like that's I would want to eat that frosting too. Not that I want to eat styrofoam, but I mean, you know, that's frosting.
Stick your finger in it.
I don't care. Like that's frosting. You need to treat it well.
So true. Okay, so that's it. So now your cake's done. Threw a little extra sprinkles on top. You can, at this point, you can put anything you want: chocolate chips, candy, drizzle with chocolate. You could make that glaze a chocolate glaze by subbing out some of the powdered sugar for cocoa powder. So that's an easy little swap. You'll just have to play around with some of the water ratios with that. But yeah, there's a lot of quick adaptations you can make to spice it up.
That is beautiful, Amanda. Both of those recipes are so easy, and that sort of reduces the pain of not being with you so that I can have a piece or a cookie because I can just make them.
It was funny because Andre saw them sitting here and he was like, oh, I was really close to eating one, but then I remembered you're probably going to need those for later.
But like I said, through the magic of television, you were able to walk us through the process and then show us the finished product. So that also means that you were busy earlier today. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course. I didn't want to have my oven on and leave cookies in during the second portion and catch my house on fire. So
that's probably smart. Do you have time to answer a question or two?
Of course, yeah.
So one of the questions was for the vinegar, if malt vinegar will do, or if that's one that you should stay away from flavor-wise for the cake.
I would hesitate to use it, but again, it's so minimal, the amount. I would prefer something a little bit milder, but you're not using a whole lot. So if that's what you had on hand, I wouldn't bat an eye at throwing that in if that's the vinegar I had handy. So yeah, feel free, it'll do the same thing.
Well, and the other thing is too that these recipes are easy enough so that all the different variations that you're suggesting, people could play around with them And some of them they'll find a favorite, you know, and who knows, maybe somebody likes the flavor of malt. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or
so another,
balsamic.
yeah, exactly, or the balsamic. So another question was, you seem so comfortable in front of the camera and just explaining what you're doing as you're doing it, and I'm wondering if you have experience teaching other people to cook and bake.
No, I don't have experience teaching baking. I did go to school for elementary teaching, so that was my original degree. But it's been many years since I've done that. So I've done a number of different professions in my day, in my time, but
Yeah.
I don't feel very comfortable.
Well, you look extremely comfortable, and isn't it funny how that sort of came full circle, so that you could use your elementary school teaching to teach us to bake. So, and one other question for you: what are you planning on cooking and baking in the coming weeks?
That's a good question. I have, so since living in Philadelphia and having access to so much takeout, I've been doing a lot less cooking and baking. So it's been kind of nice getting back in the kitchen a little bit, like forcefully. But I don't know what I'm going to bake. I'll probably end up, brownies or, just good old comfort food.
Yeah.
That, but not too much, because I don't want the quarantine 15. So we're going to balance it.
I haven't heard of that. So, and then one last question for you. If people want to contact you with questions, is there a way that they can reach you?
Yeah, for sure. My email address is a handful or a mouthful, so you might need a pen. But it's Amanda dot my last name Spasojevic @gmail.com. You can find me on there. I'm on social media too, so you can always hunt me down. One thing, I'm going to do a quick shout out though. I do have a Instagram for restaurants in Queen Village. I'm trying to get them a little bit more attention, just to help them during this time where they're not getting as many patrons. So that's at Queen Village Eats, and I try to keep up to date with which restaurants are doing takeout, delivery, which ones are closed, which ones need some extra donations. So you can always follow me on there.
That is awesome. And I will spell out your last name, Amanda.Spasojevic @gmail.com, and then at Queen's, what is the Instagram?
Queen Village Eats.
Queen Village Eats. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And that's a really good service, because I know that people who are able to are trying to make sure that they still order takeout and pick up from restaurants to support the local economy. So that's a great service. Any other shout outs?
No, that's it. That's me done.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to stop the recording, and everybody make sure that you check for the recipes and for Amanda's information in the comments. And thank you all for watching.
Thank you.